Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MTG Traders. My name is Taryn, and this is Mono Green Stompy. Alright guys, I haven't done a mono green Stompy deck since Ixalan's release, and now is the time to do it. And holy jeez, like over half the deck is almost Ixalan cards. There are so many great green cards in Ixalan that brings to the mono green Stompy deck that I just couldn't not include them. But of course, before we get into the video, make sure you hit the like button if you liked the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit the bell right beside the subscription button to know when we upload a new video on the channel and when we go live on the stream right here on YouTube. But without further ado, let's get right into it. We have 4 Greenbelt Rampager. This is a 1-mana 3/4 elephant. Whenever Greenbelt Rampager enters the battlefield, pay 2 energy. If you can't return Greenbelt Rampager to its owner's hand, you get 1 energy. So this is normally a turn 2 play regardless, but a turn 1 play of Attune with Aether, get a mana, and then a turn 2 play with 1 mana Greenbelt Rampager is quite good. But if you have a Greenbelt Rampager and just a forest in hand as well, playing that out, getting 1 energy back, and then playing another forest the following turn, and playing a Greenbelt Rampager on turn 2 regardless, being your only turn 2 play, is still very good. A 3/4 for 1 is still nothing to sneeze at. And of course, it is a 4 of because Greenbelt Rampager is incredibly powerful and, you know, has that big butt. But moving on from the Rampager, we have 4 Drover of the Mighty. This is a 2-mana 1/1 that gets +2/+2 as long as you control a dinosaur, and you can tap it to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. While the Energy Elf does give us energy in that ability, making this a 3/3 later in the game is actually quite good too, because it can become a threat that you can use in the mid to late game. So having a 4 of Drover of the Mighty makes sure our mana curve is coming out where we can play a 4-drop on turn 3, and this turns into a 3/3 as soon as that dinosaur lands on the battlefield. So Drover of the Mighty is awesome for that. But moving on from Drover, we have 4 Longtusk Cub. Again, we have sort of an energy kind of component going on right now, and I think a Longtusk Cub in this deck as well is very, very good. A turn 2 play after an Attune with Aether. This is a 3/3 that can become swinging in on turn 3, and if it starts to get in turn over turn, it's going to be a 3/3, a 4/4, a 5/5, and so on. So if your opponent does not have any removal for it early in the game or in the mid to late game, then Longtusk Cub is just going to run them over. But moving on from our Longtusk Cub, we have 3 Deathgorge Scavenger, a 3-mana 3/2 dinosaur, a 3 of. Whenever Deathgorge Scavenger enters the battlefield or attacks, you may exile target card from a graveyard. If it's a creature card is exiled this way, you gain 2 life. If a non-creature card is exiled this way, Deathgorge Scavenger gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Now, one of the best things about this guy is we have a lot of Godfrey's Gift deck, we have a lot of Embalm and Eternalize in the format. Deathgorge Scavenger, when it comes down, is going to grab that Champion of Wits, that anything that's going to kind of like come back later in the game, it's going to make sure that that stays out of the graveyard, as well as if we have a Godfrey's Gift deck activation trying to go off, we can make sure Deathgorge Scavenger is making their graveyard creature points our creature numbers a little bit lower. And even better, going up against a control strategy, if they have a Torrential Gearhulk in hand, we can start getting out their Fatal Pushes, all their other control spells, that kind of thing, and make this guy even more powerful as he attacking in for 4 instead of for 3. Deathgorge Scavenger is just a fantastic utility card, and again, we can get this out on turn 3 and make a 3/3 Drover of the Mighty as well. So it's a dinosaur, it's going to make that trigger happen for Drover of the Mighty. It's just an overall great card. But moving on from Deathgorge Scavenger, we have 4 Ripjaw Raptor, a 4-mana 4/5 dinosaur. This is where it gets ridiculous. In Rage, whenever Ripjaw Raptor is dealt damage, draw a card. So this is one of the things where I have Savage Stomp in the deck as well, and that's a card we'll talk about in a minute. But Savage Stomp is going to deal damage to this and deal damage to another creature as they fight each other, and give us a +1/+1 counter. So it's a 5/6. But also, if this guy starts attacking in, your opponent is going to want to chump block for days because it is a 1/5 of their life. And you're going to get card draw and card advantage off of it as well. So Ripjaw Raptor is an amazing turn 3 play if you can get it out with a Drover of the Mighty, and of course making Drover of the Mighty a 3/3 as well. But this is going to be our top kin curve right here. We have 4 Carnage Tyrant. We know we're going to have 4 of in this deck because it's a green Stompy. I thought about doing a split between 2 Virtuous Gearhulk and 2 Carnage Tyrant, but I think having the Hexproof can't be countered and Trample is what makes Carnage Tyrant just insanely powerful and super good for the mono green Stompy format. So a 6-mana 7/6 dinosaur, again getting that Drover trigger. Carnage Tyrant can be countered, Trample, and Hexproof. It is a tank that's going to run over anything that's in front of it. So Carnage Tyrant is ridiculous. The only way they can basically kill it is either have a board wipe spell or basically double up or triple up on creatures to block it. Carnage Tyrant is stupid. But that is it for creatures. We have 23 creatures in total in the deck. Let's move on to spells real quick. We have 4 Attune with Aether. This is one we're going to be getting our energy back thanks to the Greenbelt Rampager and the Longtusk Cub, feeding into those strategies, as well as some Aether hubs we have in the deck. But also it's going to get a mana from our deck, and that's going to thin the deck even more for us. So 2 cards out, get 1 mana out of the deck, and make our deck a little bit smaller so we can draw into more creatures. But Attune with Aether is great for that. Moving on from this, we have 3 Blossoming Defense. defense. There is a lot of spot removal in the format right now, and Hostage Taker is ridiculous, especially with a Panharmonicon trigger. I've been seeing some decks like that, which is really spicy, but Blossoming Defense is super good. A 1-mana trigger, target creature you control gets +2/+2 and gains hexproof until end of turn. Great way to protect your creature for a turn, or make sure they can kind of trade up and trade against a creature that your opponent's attacking in with. Next up, we have 4 Savage Stomp. This is ridiculous. This kind of reminds me of a Dragons of Tarkir or Khans of Tarkir block, where it's just like very specific towards a creature type. So Savage Stomp costs 2 less to cast if it targets a dinosaur you control, and put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Then that creature fights target creature you don't control. So this is basically our removal spell in the deck, but it's a 1-mana removal spell most of the time, as we have, I believe, 12 dinosaurs. Scratch that, 11 dinosaurs, so almost half in the entire deck. Our top end is definitely dinosaurs, but Savage Stomp is super good at helping get rid of any kind of creature that's on their side of the field, and if they decide to do a Blossoming Defense on their creature or something like that, the +1/+1 counter still sticks on our creature. So even though we don't get to fight, we still have the ability to get a +1/+1 counter on a, Ripjaw Raptor or a Carnage Tyrant, so that makes it even better as well. So Savage Stomp still goes off even if they have a Blossoming Defense, which I think is awesome. And then the cards in the deck, we have 2 Lifecrafter's Bestiary. A 3-mana at the beginning of your upkeep, scry 1. Whenever you cast a creature spell, you may pay 1 green if you do draw a card. So because we have 23 creatures in the main board, being able to play this out on turn 3 or 4, then being able to play out some Drover the Mighty, some Longtusk Cub, some Greenbelt Rampagers, things like that make sure we can actually get a trigger here and draw some extra cards, is great for card advantage, but also building up your play board so that whenever you can swing in against your opponent, you're going to swing for a win. I really enjoy Lifecrafter's Bestiary. There is another card for Shapers of Nature that could have been in this slot. I thought about putting it in the sideboard as well, but I just couldn't really find a spot in the sideboard. But that is something else to kind of consider, is that 1-mana Shapers of Nature enchantment that's in Ixalan. But I think Lifecrafter's Bestiary, because you have that scry at the beginning of your turn and you have the draw power, I think it's great. But that is it for the cards in the deck. Let me go over the lands real quick. We have 4 Aether Hub. Again, because we have Greenbelt Rampager and Longtusk Cub, we're going to need some energy. Aether Hub is going to help feed into that energy if we need it. Next up, we have 2 Field of Ruin. Because we have Search for Azcanta and other flip lands in the format, Field of Ruins can help deal with those. And if we're in the early game, we can also use Field of Ruin to deal with like a dual land as well. So Field of Ruin's really great for that for us. Moving on, we have 4 Hashep Oasis. So having a 4 of in this deck, we also have 2 Scavenger Grounds right after this, but having a 4 of in this deck really helps in either pushing our opponent to a death by turn 6 or 7 or turn 5, things like that, but also helping us again get a consistent Scavenger Grounds trigger off over and over again without having to sack Scavenger Grounds to himself, or to itself rather. So we have 2 Scavenger Grounds as well, and Scavenger Grounds is of course going to get rid of any kind of Embalm, Eternalized, and any kind of God First Gift strategy as well. So if we have a Locust God that's going to die or a Scarab God that's going to die, we're going to Savage Stomp into the graveyard and then Scavenger Grounds so it gets out of there. In the mid to late game, that is just a fantastic strategy. And then lastly, we have 12 Forest, and that is the full 60 in the main board. So basically game 1 is to be going for play out your bombs as quickly as possible and just kind of ramp until your board state is super powerful. Savage Stomp the creatures that are in the way, and then just swing for face. It's a very simple, straightforward strategy. Again, Ixalan brought a ton of great cards for green in the format, so it's just one of those decks where it's like every single card is a value card, even though it's just like a 4/5 that does nothing, but if it gets blocked, you draw a card. So it's just value city over and over again. But let's say we're going up against a deck that's going to be board wiping us a lot, or let's say we're going up against a deck that has a lot of spot removal that we can't really deal with. Let's go into the sideboard and see what we can do. We have 1 Life Goes On. This is a great way to kind of outlast a burn opponent, so basically a ram up red strategy where they're getting in turn over turn, they're burning our creatures to a crisp. We're trying to last a little bit longer because we know once they get into top deck mode, that's game over for them. So we have 1 Life Goes On in the strategy here to gain 4 life, or if we have a creature die this turn, gain 8 life instead, which is awesome. Then we have 2 Heroic Intervention. This is going to be up against a board-wide removal deck, so any kind of blue-white approach deck with like a Fumigate, things like that, or a spot removal deck. Heroic Intervention is going to make permanents we control hexproof and indestructible, and it can also be a great way to, when we Alpha Strike in and they start to block everything because they have trades, we can use Heroic Intervention to make sure our creature survives that encounter and lives the following turn. Next up, we have 1 Sorcerer's Spyglass. Because there are a lot of like planeswalkers in the format, like Vraska, Chandra, things like that. We'll want to use Sorcerer's Spyglass to kind of lock that down as quickly as possible, and this is a great way to do that as well in the sideboard. Moving on from that, we have 2 Appetite for the Unnatural. This is a great way to get rid of target artifact or enchantment and get some pseudo life gain off of it. The only thing that I'll be using for this is basically just the artifact and enchantment in between. This is going to be basically against a Simic strategy, a black-blue control strategy, a curse strategy, anything like that. But we also have 2 Crushing Canopy in the sideboard as well. This is a destroy target creature with flying, destroy target enchantment. So this is going to be against a Angel Invention. This is going to be against a Glorybringer, things like that, to make sure we can kind of get against those red strategies or white strategies that have the flyers that are really frustrating to deal with, and we can just get rid of their enchantments as well. So Crushing Canopy is going to be going up against a more red or white strategy, and then Appetite for the Natural is going to be going up against a more blue or green strategy, things like that, if that kind of makes sense to you. But moving on from Crushing Canopy, though, we have two Manglehorn. Again, there are some decks in the format right now, like the Infinite Combo Thopter deck, or a lot of other kind of like energy decks that use a lot of artifacts as well. Manglehorn is a great way to deal with that, as well as represent a creature on the battlefield and make other artifacts enter the battlefield tapped as well. So a 3-mana 2/2 is not great, but destroying an artifact as it enters the battlefield and making sure that artifacts come in tapped from then on is super fun too. We're probably going to have them waste 2 or 3 burn spells on it because we have Blossoming Defense or Heroic Intervention in the battlefield as well, or in our hand as well, rather. But moving on from this guy, we have 2 Prowling Sepulchre. This is a 3-mana 4/3 cat snake that can't be countered, and creatures we control can be countered. So against a heavy control strategy like an approach deck or a black-blue control deck, Prowling Sepulchre is going to come in and just wreck face. Because we have Carnage Tyrant in the deck as well, Prowling Sepulchre is just going to be an extra layer of insurance for the other cards in our deck to make sure they kind of hit the battlefield when we want them to. Next up, we have 2 Bristling Hydra. Again, because we have an energy strategy guy going on with Greenbelt Rampager and Longtusk Cub, as well as the Tomb of Aether, Bristling Hydra is going to be coming down as a 4/3, being able to give itself hexproof probably immediately, and give it 3 other pieces of energy to give it another +1/+1 counter as well. So Bristling Hydra is a super annoying 4-mana creature to deal with in the format, and Mono Green Stompy makes it even better with stuff like Savage Stomp, things like that. It's just awesome. But moving on from the last card in the sideboard, we have 1 Nissa Vital Force. It is a 5-mana 5 loyalty planeswalker with 3 abilities, +1 untapped land you control until your next turn it becomes a 5/5 elemental creature with haste. It's still land. -3, return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand, which is basically a creature for us. And -6, you get an emblem with whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. Nissa is going to be great against a control strategy or a heavy removal strategy where they're going to be constantly burning their removal on our creatures, and then we play out on our Nissa Vital Force to kind of combat to make sure that we have a creature every single turn attacking in, or making sure that we have a secondary win condition in the sideboard here. But let's go to the layout real quick. It's right here. Mono Green Stompy actually on MTG Traders is coming to about 76, 77 tickets. On paper, it's about 190 bucks. Not too bad. The reason it's so expensive is, of course, the Carnage Tyrant and the Ripjaw Raptor, and Deathgorge Scavenger is actually getting up in price as well. I had no idea until I started building this deck. But again, overall, the deck is about curving out, playing your Greenbelt Rampager as soon as possible, playing your Drover of the Mighty, then Longtusk Cub, then Scavenger, then Raptor, then Tyrant, and then just kind of swing for your Alpha Strike win. It's a very tempo-based deck, making sure that you have your plays turn over turn to get in for that nice W. But that is it for the deck, guys. Let me know what you think. Do you like it? Do you hate it? Let me know in the comments below. There were a couple cards I kind of wanted to add or take out, like Shapers of Nature. That was a great card to kind of include here. I also kind of toyed with the Old Growth Dryads or whatever from Ixalan, and I can't make that card good. Every time I played it, I was like, it's a 1/1, it's a 1-mana 3/3 on turn 1, but they get 2 mana and then they just fatal push it, and I'm like, well then never mind. There's no point to this. But the deck overall I really like, guys. But of course, let me know if you liked the video. Make sure you hit the like button, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell right beside the subscribe button to know when we have a new video going live on the channel, and so you know when we go live on the stream right here on YouTube. But I appreciate it, guys, and I'll see you guys later.